In 2026 and 2027, the biggest opportunity in the space right now when it comes to selling off-plan residential real estate, or real estate in general for that matter, is understanding and having the right marketing systems in place, specifically a paid ads acquisition system, because it's the one thing that would allow you to predictably and profitably attract clients and sign clients on a consistent basis. And the reason why it's the biggest opportunity is because everyone in the industry is using outdated playbooks and tactics and has no real systems in place to be able to make this work. They try using Facebook ads and just attract low quality leads. They try Google ads and don't know how to make that work. They invest in websites and sales tools and renders, but nothing seems to be able to attract them high quality leads on a consistent basis in a way where they can predictably sign clients. And after helping launch hundreds of millions worth of off-plan, working on projects designed by Zaha architects, winning some of the largest international awards for the work we've done, and helping train over 400 individual real estate agents solve this exact problem over the past few years, this is what I've realized. You see, most people in real estate, and in marketing for that matter, don't understand the fundamental principles when it comes to launching and selling off-plan residential real estate through paid ads. And that skill gap is exactly why the opportunity is so big for the ones who can actually learn it. So in this video, I'm going to be breaking down the entire system from beginning to end, from how to generate leads to how to book appointments to how to close those appointments, specifically when it comes to launching and selling off-plan residential real estate. I'm going to cover the most common mistakes are made. I'm going to show you exactly which ads and creatives to run and the thought process behind everything so that you can have a predictable way to launch and sell your off-plan residential real estate. Whether you're a developer looking to be able to sell direct, or you're an agency or an agent looking to promote and sell someone else's off-plan project. So let's jump into the first section. So the most common mistakes we see are a few, but the most important ones to understand are: number one, no numbers, which is the agency or the developer doesn't understand the marketing numbers behind the actual paid acquisition system. So we have to be very clear about understanding what our cost per lead is, what our cost per qualified call is, what our conversion rates on those calls are, specifically related to cold traffic and the paid acquisition system. And we also, on the other hand, have to understand the business numbers. So there's going to be the marketing metrics, and there's also going to be the business metrics. And that would be, how much are we willing to spend to be able to sign a client and sell a unit profitably? So we have to backtrack and understand what those numbers are to figure out how much are we willing to spend on marketing and what our KPIs and numbers are to understand, are we profitable? Are we making money? And is this system actually working? Because if we don't understand these numbers, it's just a guessing game. And most people go into ads by just saying, let's spend money on marketing. I have a budget of 50,000 euros. Let's spend that and hope for the best. But that's not the way the game works. We have to have a scientific approach to understanding what those numbers are, what the data is telling us, for us to be able to optimize and understand what's actually working. Developers are investing hundreds of thousands in renders, in brochures, in websites. And then when it comes to the marketing, they just hope for the best and nothing's based on real numbers. So what we want to do, and later on in this video, I'm going to be breaking down what those numbers need to be, what we should be tracking, and how that should all work. The second most common mistake I see is having no clear ICP. What I mean to say by that is ideal client persona. Who are we trying to reach with our ads and with our marketing? So having no clear ICP is the downfall of any marketing campaign, whether you're in real estate or any different niche you're operating in. But specifically for real estate, when it comes to projects, we have to understand who are we selling to. Now, let me give you an example of this. When it comes to understanding who the persona is for a luxury high-end apartment block, are we looking for local leads? Are we looking for international investors? Are we looking for retirees? Because every single one of those people has a completely different buying decision process. And we need to tailor our campaigns and tailor all our messaging and all of our funnels and all of our ads and all of our creatives to that specific person. Because if we don't do that and we have generic campaigns, they're never going to work. We have to really understand who the persona is, understand everything about them, what their pain points, objections, beliefs are, for us to be able to manufacture our campaigns, to be able to get those people to want to purchase a property from us, right? So having generic campaigns for everyone is never going to work, and is the reason why most ad campaigns fail, and the reason why you start attracting low quality leads. And we'll fix that later in this video once I show you. The third common mistake is using a website for all the campaigns. And the reason why this doesn't make sense is because a website is generic. What we want to be doing there is having funnels and specific landing pages for the specific personas we're trying to reach. Again, this is being tied into having no clear persona of who we're trying to target with our ads, with our campaign, and with our sales strategy. So these need to be aligned with each other. Now, the fourth and most common mistake is not having clear systems. And what I mean to say by this is not understanding where the bottleneck in the business is and treating every single part of the ad process and the sales process as a system. Because when we don't think of things like a system, inputs, processes, and outputs, we can never understand what is working and what isn't working and what needs to be optimized to be able to make it work. Because running ad campaigns and creating marketing is not an event. It's not something you just do and it works. It's a process of tweaking and optimizing until it actually works. Because once it does work, you have a money printing machine and a system in a way to be able to sell out your developments predictably every single time. And not thinking about it like a system is just a guessing game and a hoping game of this might work, right? And the reason why most people give up is because they're not sure where to look. They don't have the right data points. They don't have specific processes inside the system to be able to make it work. So what I'm going to be covering next is breaking down what the system actually is, how it looks like, how it works, for you to understand before we start talking about specifics and breakdowns on ad campaigns and structures and so on and so forth. Because without the right systems, nothing can work. So the most basic way to break this down is understanding the different steps when it comes to attracting leads and actually selling a unit inside the development. At the most basic level, it's a simple 4-step process you have to understand that compromises the system. The first thing we have to do is get traffic. We need to be able to get eyeballs on our project, and we then need to turn that traffic into leads. This means we have to get eyeballs into filling out forms or registrations for us to understand name, email, number, contact details, and so on and so forth. Once we can do that and convert into leads, we then need to qualify that person as a potential client. And once we do that, we can then go into converting. And that means actually closing a deal. So at the basic, it's just 4 steps to understand. From a high level point of view, it doesn't seem complicated, but what you have to understand is that every single part of the system has multiple sub-skills we need to learn and processes we have to have in order to make this work. So when it comes to traffic, we need to have ads, we need to have organic, and we have to have systems of creating ads and organic traffic that actually works. We then have to have a way to generate leads. So that means we have to have a landing page, we have to have VSL videos, we have to have copy, we have to have messaging, we have to have registration forms, right? There's a lot of different skills in order for us to get a lead in that's qualified. Then the next thing we have to do is have all of the skills to be able to qualify and engage. So we have to learn how to engage a lead. We have to have automations to qualify, to send out WhatsApp messages and SMSs. We have to have scripts to use of what our sales reps are going to do when they call up these leads. Right? How we're going to qualify those and how we're going to book them an appointment. How we're going to get them to show up to the appointment. Right? And then once we do all that, how we're going to convert. We have to have a sales process. We have to manage our sales team. We have to have a predictable way that our sales team are all following to be able to know if it's a sales issue or if it's a marketing issue. And you can understand now, from a high level point of view, it seems simple, but there's a lot of skills we have to learn in order to make this work. So as you can understand now, there has to be different processes to actually make this work, to convert. Because the most common mistake we see is that someone will go from traffic and try to convert. And they have no mechanisms and systems in between to be able to convert those leads into actual sales. And that's the biggest problem, is that people think it's an easy thing of, I got a lead, let me just start trying to close this person. But it doesn't work that way. Qualified leads are created, not found, and we have to have the right mechanisms inside the business to be able to know how to convert them. And the biggest mistake we see, like I said, is that a lead is generated through marketing, and then the sales team try to sell. The sales team sell, these leads suck. The marketing team will blame the sales team, and it's all because there's no systems to understand why it's not working and why it actually is working. So we have to have all of these documented and have process for each individual one of these. And I'm going to break that down next to understand what the funnel looks like, how the ads need to be created, the mindset and psychology behind creating those things, and how all of these things come together. So if we're looking at this diagram, it's basically breaking down from lead generation to actually closing a deal and closing a unit. And we have to understand each individual part and how it relates to the system I just mentioned, which is the 4-step process. So if we look at this over here, we have offer and we have our ads. This is where we're starting to create the ad campaigns to be able to generate traffic. And now that's through organic or through paid ads. Those paid ads and organic traffic are going to be sending to a specific landing page which is the opt-in page here, the registration page. Once someone fills out the registration page, they're sent to the available units and the availability list, they send the brochure, whatever information they've requested, and then we then push them into a sales conversation. Now, every single part of this funnel, from the lead gen side to the registration landing page to the booking a call with the sales team, these all have different KPIs and metrics we have to understand. And later on in this video, I'll be breaking down what those numbers need to be to ensure that we're successful when it comes to launching our developments. Now, we have to understand that, again, every single part of this will have different processes and different ideas. And what I'm going to be doing now is breaking down each individual one of these to understand what steps we should be taking in order to ensure success when it comes to launching our developments into the market. So the first thing is to understand traffic. Now, there's different types of traffic, but when it comes to online marketing, there's organic traffic and there's paid ads. We're going to be talking about paid ads today, but I'm also going to explain to you how we can use organic traffic on organic content to be able to help your paid ads work better. So the first place to start is, like I said, understanding who the persona is. Who are we selling to? Because if we don't understand that, our campaigns will never work. They're going to be generic. They're not going to speak to a specific type of client. They're never going to be able to get us the results we want. So in order for us to create paid ads that are speaking to a specific persona, we have to understand everything about them. And the most important things we want to understand is what their goal is. We understand their why. And we want to understand their pain points. Because if we can understand those things, we can start creating content that speaks to each individual one of these things. Because in order for us to make a sale, we have to be able to communicate it in a way that makes sense for them. Now, the best way to think about this is that every single persona we're trying to reach has different stages of awareness into our development. So let's take, for example, an investor who's international. Okay, this is the hardest type of client to get because a lot of work needs to be done. So it's a good example for us to go through. So in the past, our clients have always said, we want to have international investors, but I've often advised against it, specifically in paid ads, because it requires a lot more budget, a lot more thought, and a lot more creatives to make this work. So unless you're ready to be able to put in the work to be able to attract those investor clients, then don't do it and don't waste your money on it. Because I'm going to explain to you right now why that's really important and how it works and how much work is involved to make this actually make sense. So let's take the international investor. What we have to understand for every persona, so this exercise should be done for every single type of persona you're trying to actually reach and type of target market you're trying to reach, is understanding the levels of awareness. So in every single market, there's going to be different levels of awareness that your target market is going through. Most aware is the people who are at the top of the funnel, which is around 3% of the market. Those people have cash in hand, they're ready to buy, they know about the development. And the problem is that everyone in the space typically only speaks to these people. And what happens there is that everyone's fighting for that small 3% of a market that want to buy today, which is great and you should be doing that. However, the rest of this stages of awareness is being completely forgotten. Nobody's focusing on them because it's much harder to be able to speak to those people because it takes much more thought process. So the product aware, solution aware, and problem aware are different phases of awareness. And what we have to understand is for this specific type of persona, how can we create content and ads that speak to them at every single level? Because if we can do that, we can start attracting better clients because they're more educated, build more trust because they spend more time on our brand and more time with us because we've created the right content. And we have a much bigger market because nobody's playing that game. Everyone is fighting for that 2-3%, and 97% of the market is untouched. So what I mean to say by this is, how can we get people who are completely unaware, aware about our project or our development? And what we'll be doing there is talking about opportunities. We're talking about past client reviews of how an international investor managed to make X amount of money in the past project we worked on, or why investors are investing in this specific country. Because what you have to understand for an international investor, people don't know about the country, people don't know about the opportunity, people don't know about the investment, people don't know anything, and we have to assume they know nothing about the country and the development. So we need to start by educating them there. The country, the opportunity, and the investment. Once they're problem aware, which is like, okay, cool, I have money, I want to be able to invest in a planned residential real estate and park my money somewhere and make money. When they're problem aware, they're starting to think where would be the right idea. So we could start talking more about the country and comparing. When it comes to solution aware, typically, let's say we have a development in Europe and they're thinking about, should I go into Spain or should I invest in Portugal? So we'll create content specifically speaking about solution aware. Another one would be, what parts of Spain should I invest in as the best investment opportunity? And we can talk about the numbers, the economics, the returns of investment, about your development or the area that your development's in. Product aware, we start talking more and creating content about client reviews, about ROI of past projects, about the development specifically. And then most aware and product aware, we start talking about the individual units and what those deals would actually look like and be structured like, and what the process would be like purchasing in that specific country. So understand that if we have to look at attracting international investors, there's a lot of work that needs to be done in order to be able to get the result we want to get. And a lot of businesses and a lot of marketing agencies or business owners or developers complain because they don't attract the right leads, but they're just playing a lazy game. They're not understanding the core fundamental principles behind marketing, behind content, and how they can actually play the long game, not the short game. Because in order for us to do this, it's going to take 3 to 6 months for someone to make a decision at least, because the buying decision process is much longer. They're an international investor. There's a lot more time for them to make the decision rather than someone who's in your location who has the money and wants to buy, right? But if we get this right, and if we can have the right systems from a brand point of view and a real estate developer point of view, and we're starting to create content 6 months, a year before we actually launch our developments, that's where the money is made, where we can start growing the business predictably because we have the right content and ad and traffic systems in place. And I know this sounds complicated, but really and truly, once you understand this, really isn't. It's more about having the right systems and content strategy in place to be able to make this work. Now, most people will say, yes, this is hard. How am I going to do this? Yes, it is hard. If we're looking to sell properties to international investors that are worth 1 million to 10 million per unit, obviously it's going to be hard. It's not going to be easy as just running an ad campaign and hoping for the best. And that's why most people fail, because they think it's going to be easy. We can generate leads for international investors, but they're not going to be able to want to buy from us because they don't trust us, right? So we have to then have the right ecosystems and content in place to be able to build that trust, right? So I want you to understand the importance of understanding who the persona is and how we can start creating organic and paid ads that speak to that persona and completely customizing those creatives for that specific persona we're trying to reach. If we can understand that concept, then we can move on to the next stage. Now, the second part of the process is understanding how we can start generating leads. We could have the best creatives in the world, we can have the best ad angles and the best content, but what we have to have now is a system to be able to convert attention and traffic into actual registrations and leads. And it's a very simple way to do this. However, there's common mistakes people make. So what we want to avoid doing is sending traffic to a website. We don't want to be using a website because a website is very generic. As I said, since we're going to be customizing this experience based on who we're speaking to, the international investor, for example, we don't want to send them to the landing page of the development. Why? Because the messaging they're hearing from the ads needs to have continuity to what they land on the landing page. And the reason being is that a confused buyer doesn't buy. So what we have to be doing here when it comes to generating leads and registrations is having specific funnels and landing pages that have continuity with the same messaging that we've said in the ads. So let's take this, for example. Let's say we're speaking about ROI and we're talking about investment process, right? If we just send this traffic to the landing page of the development, then they're not going to have any idea why they should sign up or get in touch or learn more. What we want to be doing is sending this traffic to a specific landing page that has headline text and a video or content that is specifically saying what the ad said itself, and having a clear call to action that will be download the investment process, or speak to our consultant to learn more about how the investment process works, or download the ROI guide. What I'm trying to say here is that this needs to be all customized. In order for us to generate highly qualified traffic and leads, we have to be able to send them to a landing page and then have a way to capture their information through a registration form. Really important here, because the questions we ask in the form are going to what's going to help us qualify this lead further. Now, going back to what I mentioned here with regards to building out specific landing pages and funnels for the ads we're running, what we also want to do is make sure, in order for us to generate a lead, we have to give them a reason for them to want to give us their information, right? So we're going to want to keep some information back we call it a lead magnet, or a reason for them to get in touch, where in exchange for their contact information, we're going to provide value to them. So that's why I said we can have a PDF or a document on the registration process, or it could be booking a call to learn more. We have to give them a reason for them to fill out this registration form in exchange for value, in exchange for their contact information. And that's all we're doing there. We're making sure that's all customized to the type of person we're trying to reach, providing value, holding back certain information, or giving them a reason for them to actually leave their information. And that's pretty much how that's all going to work. Now, when it comes to this point, what most people get wrong here is they don't have a clear CRM. What I mean by a CRM is there's no system internally for them to be able to track their leads, to monitor their leads, and to actually get in touch and contact these leads in the quickest and most effective way. Now, I'll go into those numbers separately in later on this video. However, the reason why we need a CRM here is that as soon as the trigger on this registration form has been submitted, that contact information needs to load into the CRM as an entry with their name, email, number, and so on and so forth. This will allow our sales team, our internal team, to be able to start contacting these leads, reaching out to these leads, or allowing them to book in a call with our team automatically through this landing page. That's why a CRM is very important, because it's going to enable us to start tracking. Now, if you don't have one of these, I recommend before running any ad campaign, you have this set up specifically from the beginning, because without this, you're going to have a nightmare. You're going to have leads that are being contacted by email, some by SMS, some by WhatsApp. It's going to be impossible for you to track. And it's going to be impossible for you to hold your sales team or your team, any team, accountable. Because you want to understand how we can have accountability throughout this whole step of the way. And the only way to have that is if you have the right CRM and systems in place, so that as soon as leads are filled out and leads are being generated, they're being loaded in a place, your team are getting notified, and we can move on from there. So once we've understood that, right, we've got attention, we have the right content, we're generating leads now through a funnel. The next thing we have to understand is how can we start engaging and qualifying. So this third step here is called engaging and qualifying, because this is often overlooked. Most people generate a lead and then start trying to convert and sell. Then they wonder why nobody engages with them, nobody wants to book in a call with them, nobody wants to be on a sales process with them, because they haven't put in the right time to get at least to engage and qualify them first. It's a completely different process entirely, and I'm going to show you how it works. So once a lead has been generated, we have to have the right scripts, messages, and automations to be able to get the lead to engage. The first step we want to do before telling them to book in a call, before trying to ask for a sale, is not sell. We want to be able to know how we can start an actual conversation with a potential client, right? And the way we do this is by asking open-ended questions. So when it comes to starting conversations with these leads, the first task we have to do is get them to respond back to us. It's a foot in the door strategy, right? Because sales resistance is very high at this point, people don't like being sold to. They want to be left alone. We just need to lead with value. So we are going to ask open-ended questions and lead with value. It's really important to understand, because once we get the first response, which is just an easy way for them to get in touch with us and start a conversation, we can then move them down the pipeline of getting them to a call. But in order for us to do that first, we have to build trust and start a conversation by engaging them into a conversation and then asking the right qualifying questions, right? And it's a very simple process to do. We ask an open-ended question first. We then lead with value and ask if there's anything we can help with or what specifically got them interested about the development. And then we do that by then providing value and pitching the sales call as a value call and a way for them to learn more, right? So it's a very simple process to follow, which is number one, we want to start a conversation. Whether you're using SMS or you're actually calling the leads, we're going to start by starting a conversation. We're going to first recall, which is why, telling them what they clicked on and why you're getting in touch with them. And then we're going to ask an open-ended conversation, a question. Once we do that, the next step would be finding the problem. So it's like, what made you get in touch? What are you trying to solve? What's the goal for you? So once we find a problem, we then want to future pace the goal. So if it's an international investor, what's the problem right now? It's like the process, I'm not sure how it all works. Cool. Then we're going to future pace the goal, which is going to ask them questions like, why are you looking to invest? What's the outcome you want? Do you want to live in it? Do you want to rent it out? For us to be able to then pitch them into the offer. Because what we should be doing is customizing our sales process based on who we're speaking with. If it's an international investor, there's certain things they want to know and certain outcomes they want. If we're speaking to someone who's looking to relocate, then there's a completely different sales process as well. And if we treat them all the same, especially in the sales process, then we're never going to be able to make a sale because they feel like they're being sold to. And the idea here is consistent throughout this whole thing, which is we want to customize the marketing and the sales experience based on the persona we're trying to reach, speak to the problems that they're experiencing and the goals that they want to have, so we can position our development as the perfect opportunity for them, right? You see, there's a lot of thought process through this, not as simple as just running an ad and getting a lead. There needs to be the right systems and mechanisms in place to be able to get the results we want to get. So once we go through that whole process, we can then offer the sales call. And that's the last part of the equation, which is understanding what is the sales process. So if we're going to before, we're going to now talk about the sales process. Now this step is the most important thing. And the reason why it's really important and the reason why it's most overlooked is that most agencies, real estate agents or developers or salespeople in general for that matter, give their sales process no real thought. It's just, we have a lead coming in, I'm going to pitch them on the idea, I'm going to pitch them on the project, and that's pretty much it. And the reason why that sucks is because we can never have a predictable sales process. We can never be able to track our numbers or understand what part of the sales process is not working. And the most important part is that we can never train it to our team. If we have a team of sales agents, right? I'm a property developer and I have 5 sales agents working. How can I train those people to sell this development? How am I going to show them how to pitch the development? How am I going to explain to them what the process needs to be able to make sure that the development is positioned as exactly the right thing for the user, the client coming in, right? Because if we don't have a sales process, then we can never be able to get predictable results. We can never train people. So every single time a potential buyer is on a sales conversation with our sales team, we have no idea what's happening. We have no idea how to predict if this outcome is going to make sense or what needs to be changed moving forward. And just understand everything I've been going through right now, every single part of the paid ad strategy is always thought about separate systems and processes, because the whole game here is understanding what needs to be fixed, what needs to be tweaked, and how can we get predictability in everything we're doing in business, not just in the marketing and sales. The same process applies to every single part of the business. And you're probably aware of that when it comes to developing. You know what your cost of goods are, you know your project management for your team. There's systems and processes for everything. And the same thought process needs to be assigned to the marketing and the sales. So now I'm going to run through a sales process from a high level point of view, not getting too much detail because we'll be here for days. But the idea here is that we want to guide and manufacture the sales process to be able to increase the amount of conversions we make and units we sell. Typically what happens is a lead comes in for a sales call and the salesperson will just go straight into pitching. This is the development, this is the units, these are the amenities. But that sucks because we need to be able to customize the sales process based on who we're speaking to. And the only way to do that is by having a process. First part of the sales process is by framing. We want to frame the call and explain to them what the speed is going to happen so that we can have authority throughout the whole sales conversation and we can be the one asking questions and they can feel guided and we are the authority throughout the call. Once we frame the call, we then need to go to the discovery phase. In the discovery phase, we're going to ask questions to understand everything about the user and the client and the buyer we're speaking to, right? We're going to ask background questions. We're going to ask why they're looking to purchase, what the outcome is for them, why now is the right time. We have a specific process and script we'll follow there. But it's very important that this is all scripted out and trained and teach to our team because they should be following this so that everyone can get predictable results each and every time. So the discovery phase is just painting the picture and understanding everything about that specific client. We want to be able to uncover what the objections are going to be at the end of the sales call. So we try ask the right questions here to paint the perfect picture to understand everything about this client so we can make sure we propose the right units, the right structure, and the right pitch. Once we have the discovery done, we understand everything about the client. We then go into the transition, which is explaining to them why we think this development is right for them. It's just a high level promise of we are going to go now into the pitch. We just have to have a way for us to be able to pitch without it feeling like we're pitching them or we're pitching the development to them. Because what happens a lot of the times is discovery goes really well. We ask all of these questions to understand. And then it's like you've built trust with this lead. and this potential buyer. And then it's like you throw all of that out the window and you start pitching your development. We have these units and we have these things, but that shouldn't be the way it works. The pitch should be like it's customized to them. And the only way to do that is by transitioning into the pitch in an organic way that feels natural. So listen, based on what you said, I feel like this development is right for you. There's specific units in this development that will be perfect for property investors and return on investment and rental. Would you like me to explain to you the project and how that works? That's a basic transition. Then we move into the pitch, and the pitch is just us talking about the development in a way that makes sense to what we asked in the discovery phase. We don't want to pitch anything that's not relevant to a property investor. We just want to pitch to them what they need to hear, the units they need to know about, the amenities, the lifestyle, and the process. Once we go to the pitch, we then go into the commitment phase, which is asking the pricing, figuring out what units they want, and then we go closing. But the most important thing to understand is that this should be scripted out. This should be trained and taught to your team. And the sales calls that your teams make should be all recorded so that you can then analyze those sales calls and figure out what your sales team are doing wrongly. Remember, you at this point as a property developer have probably invested hundreds of thousands in marketing. You've done all of the hard work. You've done the perfect renders, you've created content, you've created the website, you've created property brochures, you've done everything you needed to do and spend a lot of time and money. And the most important part now is actually getting to a close. But if we're not following a sales process and we haven't trained our team properly, then we are responsible for this. And it's very important that we can now know the most important part of the reason why we did marketing in the first place is to be able to close more deals. And if we are not on top of this and we haven't manufactured and designed the sales process to make the most sense and to make the most sales, then we're just hoping for the best again. And you know anything about me and data and hope in marketing and sales, hope is not a strategy. We need to have a system that's repeatable every time. Think about it. If your sales team leave tomorrow, what's going to happen? You're going to get new random agents to come in to be able to try sell your development, and it's going to be hoping again. There needs to be the system to be able to train them the sales process so they know exactly how to pitch, what to say, how it all works for us to get repeatable results every single time. And that's pretty much the 4-step process. Now, if we could do that, if we can understand at every single part of the 4-step process, there's systems and processes we need to know for each individual one and identify what those are, then we can have a predictable way to sign clients for every new development we launch. It becomes a numbers game. Rather than just hoping and paying marketing agencies and retainers there and we can just look at the numbers and understand how much can we spend, how much are we spending, what part of the funnel isn't working, and what do we need to optimize as a team, whether it's a marketing issue, an ad issue, a content issue, a sales issue, a setting issue, and figure out what we need to optimize to be able to make this work better for the business. Right? Because now what I'm going to break down is understanding the numbers and the metrics to all of this. Because we can reverse engineer what the numbers need to be for us to actually make sense. So the numbers we want to be tracking throughout all of this funnel are the following. We need to understand the cost per lead. We need to understand the cost per sales appointment. Also the cost per qualified appointment. We need to understand what our show rate is. How many of these people show up to the appointments? And we also need to understand what our close rate of our team is. Because if we can understand these numbers, we can then understand the cost per acquisition. How much are we spending to sign and to close one unit and one deal? Because if we can understand these numbers, it's going to give us the touch points of what is not working in the business. So let's take this for a real life example. So let's say every single one of these numbers should have KPIs. And the KPIs are numbers representing what does success look like to us. So let's say we're selling a property or properties of 500,000. Okay? Now, what is our profit margins on that? We have to figure out our profit. And we can also figure out if we sell direct, what the profit is, because typically a real estate agent would take 5% commission. So if we're selling direct and we're building up this marketing funnel, we're doing all of this work, how much are we actually saving if we sell it direct? So we want to reverse and understand all of these numbers to figure out how much can we spend to sell a unit profitably. So let's just take this for example. We're selling a unit of 500,000. We want to remove the 5% commission from real estate agents, which is around 25K. So we're going to add plus 25K to the profit here if we sell it direct. So what we want to figure out is now, okay, how much are we willing to spend to sign this client? So if we spend 2K to 10K to be able to sign this client and make an extra 25K in reduced commission from the agency fee, plus the profit on the unit, we're in a good position. Right now, obviously, we have to work out these numbers based on the actual project we have at hand. But from a high level point of view, this is how I have to think about it. We have to understand what our cost per acquisition needs to be for us to be healthy. So then we reverse engineer those numbers into all of these metrics. So cost per lead, we should have a KPI for this. And a KPI means a target number we should be hitting. So let's say a KPI for us to generate a lead needs to be $5 to $50. We'll be happy to be within that ratio. Obviously, that's a massive ratio. Could be smaller, but just for the sake of this example, that's what we're working on. 5 is amazing, 50 is high. Cost per appointment, this should be around $150 to, let's say, $300. Then the cost per qualified appointment. Okay, how much are we willing to spend for a qualified appointment? What are we happy with? Let's say for every $400 spent, we have a qualified appointment with someone who wants to buy, who has the money and who's ready, right? Which is a good number to have because we're selling something of 500,000 euros, which is probably making us around 100,000 euros in profit. So these are healthy numbers. Then we have to know what our show rate is. Typically, we want a show rate of 75% plus, meaning out of all the people who booked the appointment, 75% of those people showed up. Then what our close rate is. We have to understand, okay, what close rate do we want to be a healthy close rate on qualified appointments? So let's say we have anything between a 10 to 30% close rate. So now once we start tracking the actual numbers, every single day and every single week, we can look at these numbers and metrics to understand, are they within KPIs? Are they being hit? And if they are not, then we can identify, is it the ads that need to be updated? Is it that the sales team is not closing? And if the sales team are not closing, is it the sales process, or is it the pricing of the project? Or is it something about the project that we haven't built trust with the clients don't really want to invest in? We have now the numbers and the data to understand what we should be working on. And that's what I mean to say by understanding the funnel, understanding that every single part of this funnel has numbers throughout it all. The conversion rate on the leads, the conversion rate on the landing pages, the conversion rate on the sales calls, the registration forms. All of these have KPIs and numbers that I go into in another video. However, they're a bit more complicated to go. I'll be here till tomorrow explaining all of those. But the idea here is that we then have a predictable funnel. We can know what needs to be optimized. We can spend time optimizing those things, and we can start figuring out predictably how we can start signing clients. Now, every single one of the things I mentioned deserves a separate video of me breaking down exactly what that looks like when it comes to the ad creatives and the ad copy and the headline text and the landing pages. However, for the purpose of this video, I just want to explain to you the importance of thinking in systems and processes when it comes to launching and selling off-plan residential real estate from a marketing point of view. Because if your agency or if your team is not thinking this way, you are never going to get the results you want, because it's always a guessing game and a fingers crossing game, hoping that something works. Now, I hope this video was useful for you. I will be making more videos on each individual one of the processes to make sure I can really explain in detail what needs to be done at every step of the way. Now, thanks for watching this video. I hope you can understand the opportunity there is in the market, because nobody's thinking this way, especially in this industry. So if you do need more help and you have any questions, leave them in the comment section below or reach out to me on my social platforms. I'd love to talk to you. I'd love to help. And also, if you're not aware, we're currently building out Brickly.com specifically for real estate developers. It's an operating system that manages your entire business from beginning to end when it comes to marketing and sales, from leads to ads to availability to the sales process to a CRM. We're launching in a few weeks, so don't forget to subscribe to the channel for updates, and I'll catch you in the next one.